Hi, Sandi Maki here with a little bit of heavy breathing just before midnight. Yesterday I talked a little bit about masterminding, and then I had my real in-life Thursday morning mastermind meeting today. And I wanted to share a little bit more about masterminding and, just talk about it a little bit more. One of the really cool things about being a part of a mastermind experience is, unlike other things which we could put on our schedule that feel like a commitment that we know that we need to have, but we're not really sure if we feel like it, when a mastermind group is on track with its intention and its purpose, I think that a lot of the members in it end up with a sense of excitement and addiction to the meeting in a good way. It's like if something profound happens or a concept comes up, it's almost like you can't wait until your group meets again so that you can share it and explore the topic. And it just feels really good to be a part of that collective something, whatever that energy is. And sometimes it's hard to put words to it. Which brings up something that we also talked about. We're compiling a number of stories from our members that have been a part of masterminding, and really the entire Insight's existence has been about masterminding. People coming together and sharing thoughts and philosophies and feelings and exploring the world in a whole new way. That's what it's been from the start. And we wanted to put together a little bit of a celebratory guide, I suppose you could call it. We could call it a book. At this point, I'm not really sure because we said that submissions could come in all different types of forms. But basically, the message that we wanted to be able to share was a little bit of each of our personal stories and what masterminding is to us and what it's done in our lives. Well, so far I know a lot of people in the group and that have been a part of this since the beginning have shared their intent to write something. And we did have one submission that came in. I think for a few of us that have already read it, now we feel like the bar was set a little bit high and we're not quite sure that our stories measure up. And in the meeting when we were talking about this today, and a few of my fellow members and very close friends were saying, I just don't know, it doesn't feel profound enough. It doesn't feel like I'm sharing enough. It doesn't feel like it's impactful enough. That pressure is not coming from our expectation. Anyone who would read the book or read your story, there is no expectation. I think the intent is that we would read it and that we would get to know you in some way. And when I write my story, that's what I'm hoping to do, is allow you to get to know me just a little bit more, which is exactly what I do every time I hit the record button on heavy breathing. And it's not perfect, and it's not always profound. And I don't think profound moments come from people who want to be found profound. I think profound moments come from people who are sharing their vulnerabilities, sharing their thoughts and feelings, sharing their own exploration of the world that we're all just trying to make sense of. Because when I read what you're thinking, and when I read what you've done, and when I read how you feel about something, and I can see myself in your story, or pieces of me in your story, or I can see you in your story, and I can see the inner dialogue that's gone through in your head, and I see the person that you are putting out to the world. When I can see that, when I can witness it myself through your words, through your actions, and through the feelings that you convey through your story, that's when it's profound. I don't think any one of us could wake up any given day and say, I'm going to be profound today. This is the day, doggone it, where I'm going to tell my profound story. I don't think it happens like that. And I think if we tried to do it like that, we would get the results that I think we could expect if somebody just proclaimed, I'm profound, which is probably a whole lot of nothing, if you can imagine. And I know you can imagine, because I know that there's a lot of people that probably do this in your life, and I know there's a lot of people that I can see that do this in my life. And there's a difference between the masterminding energy and the energy of everyday conversation. And sometimes we refer to those everyday conversations as the drapery talk. That's when you talk about news, sports, and weather. And those are perfectly legitimate things to use when breaking the ice with people. We need to establish some common ground somewhere so that we can continue having a conversation. Well, the magic with masterminding is that common ground comes in the form of philosophy, thoughts, inner feelings, and a lot of other things that simply get missed in the drapery talk. Masterminding in and of itself is profound, but not because anyone strives to be profound. It's because everybody strives to be a little bit authentic, a little bit vulnerable, and really exploratory in the world. We got into a couple of heated discussions in Mastermind this morning, and they could be seen as arguments from an outside observer, yet the intention of everyone in the group is to bring opinions, and when you feel that you have a valid opinion, to argue that opinion. I think when I argue my opinions, I solidify my position. And sometimes, if someone else counters in a way that is also a little bit fired up, and they're convicted, sometimes those things completely change the way that I feel about things. And maybe sometimes the things that I say change the way that you feel about things. We've done a lot of talking about personality styles. And I do have a personality style that does enjoy discussion, back and forth, banter. And I don't enjoy when people just agree with me. Of course, I'd like to say that I like when people just agree with me, but really that's not what I'm seeking. What I'm seeking is someone who is as convicted in what they're doing and what they're saying and how they believe as I am. So we can have a fired up conversation about it, which will allow us both to grow. It's not that one is a winner and one is a loser. Not by any stretch. Because everything that we're doing in this life, everything that we see and hear and do and feel, it's all a matter of perspective. So how can there be a right and a wrong to that? There's not. There's just a lot of different ways of looking at things. And each of our personality styles processes information in its own individual and unique way. And that's part of what happens in these mastermind groups. When you hit the door, you've got to leave some of that outside stuff, that drapery talk, that surface level interaction. You've got to leave that at the door. And you've got to be ready. You've got to be ready with an open mind to look and see and feel and experience what's happening. And for anyone who's listening to this, who's a part of our storytelling masterminding experience, then know that you don't have to set out to be profound. And you don't have to put anything together that feels like it's going to hit, the bestseller list. If you're authentic and you share your story, and I'm authentic and I share my story, I think we're both going to touch the world. And that's really part of that aim. So I keep talking about masterminding, and I know there's a lot of resources to find out more about it. And so I'll share a little something that I'd compiled a while ago to explain masterminding. So maybe you can learn a little bit more, and maybe if you're already a part of it, then you'll just enjoy the concept because you are a part of something pretty special. Masterminding happens when two or more individuals get together in the spirit of cooperative harmony to accomplish a goal, activity, or result. This could be something as simple as setting an intention to explore philosophy. And it could be something like starting a business. There's really no rule for it, but it's getting together because when I sit down and have my crazy thoughts and you sit down and have your crazy thoughts, we each have our own crazy thoughts, but when we put those crazy thoughts together, they multiply and they become amazing. Many of the great accomplishments and miraculous achievements of history were brought about through the power of this principle. Mastermind group members throughout history have been known to act as an advisory group for each other help create amazing and powerful ideas, and support each other in personal and professional achievement. And this is uniquely possible through a collaborative group experience. You can have a mastermind with 2 people. You could probably, depending on how mind-bendy you are, almost have it with 1 person, depending on how many people you were able to talk to during that experience. I know authors Napoleon Hill and Wallace Wattles have referred to having conversations with a mastermind group in their head by talking to people that have made profound achievements that came long before them. So it's possible in a whole lot of different forms. If you're not quite that mind-bendy yet, then I'd encourage you to get a friend. And when you try to get this friend or you put this group together, if you're at all interested in starting something like that of your own, you've got to remember we're going deeper than the surface. And it takes a special person, special people, and a special type of bond to be able to do something like this. Anybody is capable of it. You've just got to remember what to keep in mind. Benjamin Franklin is credited with being with one of the first mastermind groups. He called the Junto, which is Latin for meeting. And his original group was formed to provide a forum for structured discussion. He called together a group of friends, including printers, surveyors, merchants, a cobbler, and a clerk. It consisted of 12 members, and they shared a spirit of inquiry and a desire to help others and improve themselves and their community. We found that definitely groups of 12 or less are best, because in this mind-sharing experience, there's a lot of conversation, because words are what we have to be able to connect and share with each other. And if you have too many people trying to talk all at the same time, it gets a little confusing. So making sure that you have the right number is a really important thing. In the early 1900s, another group formed in Chicago. 6 men who had big ideas but not a whole lot of money started meeting every Saturday at a local restaurant for dinner. These men put Chicago on the map, becoming worth several $1 million each, which at the time was an exceedingly enormous amount of money. The group became known as the Chicago Six. You may have heard of some of them. One attributed to being in the group was Charles Wrigley, who created the Wrigley's chewing gum empire. Another was William Hertz, who built the Yellow Cab Company. Their businesses were started and succeeded with help of their Mastermind Alliance. In 1908, Napoleon Hill was commissioned by Andrew Carnegie, who was then the richest man in the world, to interview the 504 most successful people of that time. The objective was to find out what success has in common. Now, about 30 years later, or nearly 30 years later, in 1937, Dr. Napoleon Hill published his timeless classic, Think and Grow Rich. In his personal interviews and observations of the most successful people of his day, he said, "Analyze the record of any man who has accumulated a great fortune, and many of those who have accumulated modest fortunes, and you will find that they have either consciously or unconsciously employed the mastermind principle." And we know what fortune means. Money is energy, so amassing great amounts of fortune and wealth is being able to direct a great amount of energy in the universe. Which is why one of my favorite works is The Science of Getting Rich by Wallace Wattles. And you can read it, or you can listen to it. Might be in my voice, but hey, that's probably a good thing. Another excerpt from Napoleon Hill's book. No individual may have great power without availing himself of the mastermind. This form of cooperative alliance has been the basis of nearly every great fortune. Your understanding of this truth may definitely determine your financial status. And Dr. Hill described this mastermind principle as the coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between 2 or more people for the achievement or attainment of a definite purpose. When 2 or more people coordinate in a spirit of harmony and work toward a definite objective or purpose, they place themselves in position through the alliance to absorb power directly from the great storehouse of the creative mechanism of each contributing mind. One of the thoughts that Napoleon Hill shares about the mystical quality that's created when a mastermind group comes together is that no two minds ever come together without thereby creating a third, invisible, intangible force, which may be likened to a third mind. In other words, your ability to create things in the world is increased by having that invisible third mind of the mastermind group. I think this is possible without putting a group together. And I think it's when we do what Wallace Wattles terms as tapping into that thinking stuff. We can do that. But when we tap into that thinking stuff alone, it's one thing. When we tap into it with others, that's a whole nother story. People who've become involved in mastermind experiences through insights have changed their lives. And we don't always know this, because sometimes on the outside, they look and seem absolutely perfect. Perfect life, business is going well, they seem happy, well-adjusted. We couldn't imagine that inner dialogue that sometimes is playing through their minds. I know if you can imagine your inner dialogue, you might have an idea what I'm talking about. It's those thoughts that we have, those self-limiting, self-doubting beliefs. I just watched the movie Shallow Hal, which surprised me that I ended up quoting it quite a bit in the mastermind group this morning. Shallow Hal's got a pretty good message that it tries to get across, and it must in some aspects because I was quoting it. And yet, I guess I was disappointed because it felt like it fell a little bit short. But I don't know if it fell a little bit short, or if we, as society, and as this collective mind in our culture, falls a little bit short. The premise of the movie, in case you haven't seen it, is that Hal is pretty shallow, and he looks at outer beauty, especially in women, as the deciding factor on whether or not it's worth it to spend time with someone or invest in a relationship with them. And he's altered a little bit through an encounter with Tony Robbins to see everybody's inner beauty. And one of the lines that comes from the movie, which I will not quote word for word because I just don't do that, but the concept was, we all have the ability to see that inner beauty. So what is it that makes it not so? What makes us see outer beauty and limit that ability to see the inner beauty? And really, we all can perceive ourselves as beautiful every minute of every day. And when that changes is when we perceive there's that third-party observer. It's that third-party observer that is really not observing us in judgment because they're probably too busy observing themselves in judgment. But it's that third party that we give so much power to. That third party that comes from culture and society, that dwells in the drapery talk and the surface level discussions. That's what we in a mastermind group, that's what I in the mastermind group strive to understand. How is that possible? How does that come into play? How does it affect my life? And how can I remember that when it's happening? And how can I change it? And that's where tapping into that other unseen mind really comes in handy. The Insights group has been conducting mastermind groups since opening the doors. And really, Al Curtis and I have been masterminding since before that, which is what even made the Insights group possible. That idea to even form the space and the place that made it all possible. So much success in my life, success in Al's life, and success in each of the members' lives that have come through this has just been mind-blowing and profound. If you followed the story of the Freedom Skater, you'll know how profound. It's how a recent college graduate goes from not quite sure what he's going to do to skating 3,500 miles coast to coast. Really, where did that come up from? It came from being empowered by such a special experience. When you share yourself and you share your dreams and goals with others who are like-minded and have the ability to support you, and this isn't any extra special ability, it's not a certain amount of money, but it's the ability to think in a certain way and the ability to empower you to tap into that thinking stuff. That's where the magic happens. And remember when you don't feel like you're really that profound. And I remember when I feel like I'm really not that profound. That's not why people are showing up. And that's not why people are listening. They're listening and they're paying attention and they're spending time in that space. Because maybe, just maybe, if they hang around with you, and if I get to hang around with you, and if you get to hang around with me, and we intend things in a certain way, then more than we ever thought possible, with our single sense of consciousness, will be created in this universe. And that's when masterminding is a pretty darn special thing.